Get ready to confess to Senpai, check your power level, and grab a jelly donut.
These donuts are great! Jelly-filled are my favorite!
This is Heart Talks Anime on Pilaf Entertainment.
It's too good to be true. My lucky day.
See about that.
Cartoon Network is building you a better cartoon show. We call it Toonami.
Oh, thank heaven. The world may yet be saved.
Do it now. Do it now.
These fan-made subtitled videos came to be known as fansubs. Their mission? Spread the word and raise awareness of this foreign entertainment medium by providing free access to the translated material.
Anime, a term that relates to animation from Japan. So many things have been inspired in pop culture from this type of animation. It has varied in popularity over the years, but now is a true staple in all of entertainment. And really, there isn't one show or movie or even manga to give all the credit to. This was truly a group effort due to various programming blocks, translations, dubs, and various different releases of media. All of it pushed the medium to what it is today, and hopefully always will be. With that said, hello all my humans out there on the interweb, my name is Hart, and this is the story of 3 anime booms. I love various anime eras. The way that styles change and evolve has always been so fascinating to me. Now, one thing I do want to eventually talk about is every anime decade, but that's a little different from what we were talking about today. In my opinion, the 3 anime booms, as in times where anime hit a new height in popularity in a major way, was in the late 90s, early to mid 2000s, and the 2020s, especially in the West. These are times when anime hit major heights in accessibility and in popularity. It's also interesting because it's pretty much just a matter of cultural timing, technological shifts, and even fan identity. But by this point, you know I always have to ask, how did we get here? To get an answer to that, we have to go all the way back to the late 1940s in Japan to meet the father of anime.
It may sound strange, but it is Chaplin I have in mind when I make animated films. I don't mean to refer to Chaplin's humor and gags, but to his experimental element and popularity that makes people in the world feel happy. And I think animation is the same thing. Once animation used to be too experimental and self-satisfied. But it is my desire to make animated films regarded by the audience as universal language.
With most of the early examples of Japanese animation being lost or destroyed, it had to look for modern examples to pull from. By this point, Walt Disney was out of their golden and wartime era and heading into the Silver Age. This inspired many Japanese mangaka. However, local artists started developing their own style, in more ways than one. While Disney was often over-exaggerated and even drawn frame by frame at times, resources were limited, so Japanese animation became simple and expressive, due to not being able to lean on a high budget, smooth animation, and colors. With Disney still very much being in a bit of a fairy tale era with the Silver Age, anime pushed for more mature stories, with everything starting to take off in the late 1940s and 50s. Studios started to pop up in Japan. Hiroshi Takahata bought a small studio in Japan, naming it Japan Animated Films, renaming it to Toei Doga, with their end goal wanting to be the Disney of the East. But for the Japanese public, Panda and the White Serpent would be the first time Japan fully entered the world of professional animation. During all this time, Osamu Tezuka, a 19-year-old boy from Osaka, Japan, had already made his name known in the Japanese comic scene with the release of Treasure Island in 1947. Fast forwarding to the late 50s, a group of animators and artists came together to found Toei Animation, who would go on to produce the first color anime film, The Tale of the White Serpent in 1958, which released in the US in 1961. Due to the success of the project, Toei would produce at least one feature-length film every year. One of the artists on staff, of course, was Tezuka. After his contract with them expired, he then went on to found Mushi Productions in 1961, and the rest is truly history. Tetsuan Atom, aka Astro Boy, was released in 1963. as well as Kimba the White Lion and Princess Knight, one of the earliest examples of shoujo anime. The studio pioneered so many production and story techniques still seen in anime today, including the limited animation, which is used to save money. And of course, while technically the first anime shown in the US was Animal Baseball Match in 1957, the first full show to broadcast on a major network in the US was Astro Boy on NBC in 1963. While US kids did enjoy the futuristic world and the action, it did run into some problems. As anime became darker and more complex, which is what made Tetsuka and anime style storytelling so unique, US broadcasters would edit over it or just outright skip content, completely diluting its depth. And yes, of course, this did upset Tetsuka. A follow-up series didn't come out fast enough, so the momentum faded. Later we would get Gigantor or Tetsuin 28 Go, Kimba the White Lion, and Match Go-Go aka Speed Racer. Kimba being praised for its artistic style and emotional depth, Gigantor getting some popularity and capitalizing on the sci-fi appeal, and Speed Racer becoming a cult hit. And that's almost all the positive things I can say about the reception in the US at this time. The animation was still very stiff compared to various American cartoons, especially things like Fleischer's Superman cartoon and pretty much everything Disney was doing at the time. To American audiences, it just lacked polish. Most of the Saturday morning cartoons dealt with lighter themes, especially in the late 60s, while Kimba dealt with themes of death, colonialism, and Speed Racer had a lot more death and violence than typical US cartoons. The main problems the US had at this time was fandom, dubbing issues, animation style, and possibly the biggest roadblock of all, cultural differences. Themes like death, war, or loss of close friends and family were common in anime, which is why a lot of them, especially the ones that were a bit more obscure, that released before about 1980-85-ish, have dark themes and bittersweet endings. But US kids TV usually avoided these subjects. The limited visuals felt cheap to US audiences. They were raised on smoother productions like the rotoscope animation of Disney or the smoother cell animation from Hanna-Barbera. Poor translations and jokes that would get lost in localization, with the fast talking to match the lip flaps being awkward and cheesy. Of course, at the time, there was no internet or even local fan culture to run into, so when these shows released, they truly felt out of place. But the brave steps Tetsuka and these shows took can't ever be forgotten. They helped shape what would become an international phenomenon. March 17th, 1997, on Cartoon Network, Toonami premiered, being created by Sean Atkins and Jason DeMarco. Okay, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's actually an understatement to say that anime in the 90s was extremely niche, not even really being called anime, still being called Japanimation in the early 90s, mainly relegated to VHS rentals, fan sub circles, also mail order catalogs like Anime Go. Fan subs at this time were also critical. Fans would subtitle anime by hand, copy it onto a VHS, and mail it to others. Slow, but it was instrumental in fan growth. Other than that, yeah, there isn't really too much else to speak on at this particular point. That's just how niche anime truly was. Now we can fast forward to March 17th, 1997, on Cartoon Network, Toonami premiered, being created by Sean Atkins and Jason DeMarco. Being originally hosted by Moltar, in the beginning, anime really wasn't the forefront quite yet. Mainly older action cartoons like Voltron, Thundercats, and even Johnny Quest. While shows like Johnny Quest and even Super Friends fit what the block was going for, Voltron and a show called Robotech looked a little different. The founders Sean and Jason were both very into anime and wanted to see it grace Western television. In 1999, this would become a reality with a new host.
So it's a brand new Toonami, but the mission objectives remain the same. My name is Tom. I'm the new Moltar.
Toonami Operations Module, aka Tom, was and is a CGI robot who pilots the Absolution. Shows like Outlaw Star, Gundam Wing, Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Moon, and Dragon Ball Z became anchor shows for the block. It saw a large spike in adult viewers, with the AMV-style DMB/breakcore promos, space station visuals, and tone being more serious. This made anime feel important, and most importantly, cool. But this didn't mean that kids were left out of this boom.
It's coming, it's coming!
But what is it?
What is it? Haven't you heard? It's a Digithon! 7 Digimon shows all on the same day!
Yes! I can't believe it!
Fox Kids was a Saturday morning cartoon block, of course on a major network. And what set this and one other program we'll talk about in a bit apart was it was a free station, unlike Toonami, which was only a cable block. If you had a TV at the time, you most likely could watch this channel. The block always had a focus on more action shows like Power Rangers and Batman. The company also was not opposed to international content. Seeing that anime was on the rise, they started to seek things to add. Power Rangers was actually a great start in getting the younger gens used to Japanese storytelling, structure, and aesthetic. They then would debut shows like Metabots and Digimon, with Digimon being their heavy hitter, that had surprisingly deep themes like American superhero cartoons at the time, literally covering themes of identity, trauma, and even death. But both of these shows follow a certain trend. While Toonami was handling the shonen age demographic, Kodomonoke, which are shows that target 6 to 11-year-olds, are what these networks were trying to find, especially after Kids WB gained one of the most iconic cultural phenomena ever recorded, not in just anime, but pop culture as a whole.
Pokeball, go! Ash, have you had your breakfast yet? Mom, I'm busy training. Ash. Okay. Bulbasaur, cereal, now! Squirtle, milk moo! Charmander, toast attack!
Stay tuned for another all-new Pokemon next!
Did you burn the toast again?
Kids Warner Brothers was doing the same thing Fox Kids was doing, just on weekday afternoons, and of course still being free. After an initial syndicated run in Japan, Pokemon debuted in 1999. And I think this is another time where we can say, the rest was history. Both shows and many more from Fox Kids were all to try and keep up with this show. The only one that was ever to get anywhere close was Digimon, with it still having new series to this day. But even it was no match for the adventures of Ash and Pikachu. At its peak, it was the #1 show amongst not just boys and girls, but all kids 6 to 11, even beating out Nickelodeon's SpongeBob. The main point in this boom was making anime visible. Places like Blockbuster, a video game and video rental store, started to add anime sections, and some of the first anime-focused cons sparked. Plus, a trend we'll also see is the timing. This was right when Western audiences started to be fascinated with Japanese culture as a whole, so anime was another way to not necessarily fully learn, but experience it. And most importantly, the way anime told its stories was finally being appreciated. Gone are the days of the cartoon storytelling styles of the late 50s and 60s. The long character arcs and emotional depth in these shows was starting to be normalized. The major issue during this time, though, being, well, once again, censorship. 4Kids Entertainment handled most of the dubbing for Kids WB anime, and not all the swaps were really bad in my opinion, whether it be from a business standpoint or an entertainment one. They helped anime reshape mainly for an American audience, with name changes and music swaps. This essentially was anime's second chance to make major waves in Western TV in over 20 years, so some of these sacrifices do make sense. While I don't agree with making changes to core stories, changing Satoshi, Kasumi, and Takashi to Ash, Mitsuki, and Brock was just easier for audiences to digest, which I truly feel is fair. One of the channels I don't have time to get into right now is Deke Entertainment. They did this also with Sailor Moon, changing Usagi to Serena. Same point with the music swaps, giving a different take on endings and outros. Because 4Kids did this, it literally led to one of the most iconic openings in all of anime history. Another thing that was done was giving all of these characters distinct voices. That also helped this age demographic identify every character easier. Going back to Sailor Moon, a character like Molly has a New York accent in the Deke dub. What I don't agree with, however, is the cultural edits and any changes to the story. Toonami shows really had this issue, like DBZ cutting content and sometimes just not showing episodes in chronological order. Pokemon had many, but the one that lives in infamy.
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
Then, of course, various characters from various animes passing on into another world instead of actually dying. But despite all the jelly donuts, lollipops, and infinite losers, oh my goodness. Anime was truly on its way for the first time, finally, with Toonami's Dragon Ball and WB's Pokemon leading the way. Now, we come to the era where fans took this and absolutely ran with it, making anime into a more mature experience and expanding the audience into new heights. By 2000 to around 2002, anime was in full swing. Kids WB was still on top with Pokemon, while Fox Kids did end in 2002 and then was replaced with 4Kids TV. The dubbing and localization company would now have their own satellite channel that saw just as much success. And of course, Toonami taking things to a new level, still having shows like Dragonball and Sailor Moon. It would grasp the older demographic with Midnight Run, now showing more complex, violent, and sometimes a bit explicit shows like Paranoia Agent, Fooly Cooly, FMA, Inuyasha, and Cowboy Bebop. Plus, they would now show the unfiltered versions of shows like Yu Yu Hakusho. But the focus in this era really isn't even on the programming blocks. By this point, humans knew what anime was. It was still that weird Japanese cartoon, but now had a true cult-like following. One that was willing to go the extra mile for more shows and authentic experiences. You cannot talk about this era in anime popularization without bringing up DVDs, VHSs, conventions, fan subs, and the internet as a whole. Fans in general were tired of not getting the full experience from these shows. The dub changes, censors, all of it was starting to become exposed due to various reasons, the internet being one of them. But let's start with the most legit way that things got traded. Digital video discs, or digital versatile discs, were released in Japan in 1996. By the early 2000s, they had already almost replaced video home system cassettes. DVD box sets started to release and give anime that expensive, prestigious feeling, and other than VHSs, I think this is really where the investigation started for more authentic releases and cuts. These DVDs had original subs or raw uncut versions. Fans started to notice the difference between the dialogue in the sub and the dub. The earliest example of a fan sub documented was in 1986 for Lupin III, with that episode taking over 100 hours to do, but it was used to market an Amiga computer. Fast forwarding to the 2000s, fan subs were traded back and forth on VHS and Betamax tapes. Then the introduction of IRC channels, file hosting services, and websites like BitTorrent were how fans got them. And yes, this method in many ways is still looked down upon, but at the end of the day, it brought in so many new fans. Neon Genesis Evangelion's cult following almost owes all of its success outside of Japan to DVDs and fan subs. Then anime internet culture was taking over forums, and anime music videos were very popular around this time, shedding light on these shows that not a lot of people might have seen before. Just overall, the access to anime at this time was really what defined this era. The introduction of otaku and weeb culture also played a major part. While usually having a negative stigma around these terms, they really are just humans who embrace all things anime and even Japan through anime, leading to things like cosplay and conventions, with some of the most popular ones being pioneered and popularized during this time. Ones like Anime Boston, Central, Festival Orlando, and Expo all saw large spikes around this time, with Japanese fans and artists being able to see the reach of these shows and manga. Speaking of which, because of shows like Naruto and Bleach, manga sales also saw a very significant spike. Even with all of this though, we have to leave on a bittersweet note. Despite being prevalent figures in the late 90s, between the FCC's restriction on educational content, anime licensing moving to cable and eventually online, and of course Toonami and Nickelodeon reaching new heights, 4Kids would be a thing of the past by 2008, and Kids WB would remove all of its anime content by the end of that same year. This overall was a real doom and gloom year for so many pioneering anime stations. Toonami unfortunately started to hit a decline in 2005. The lineup started to lose its charm by being diluted by Western action shows and less anime. Even it was affected by anime licensing as the years went on, and even though it did help popularize the media, fan subs really did put a dent in Toonami's influence. As we talked about earlier, fans were tired of censorship, dub changes, and incomplete seasons. Now with the stigma of not only cable TV, but English anime in general not giving the fans the full experience, it really hit a lot of the pioneers of this boom, even Toonami, with its final broadcast being September 20th, 2008. But this was nowhere near the stop in anime culture. In fact, it was truly just getting started in Western pop culture. The otaku subculture absolutely took over anime. It wasn't just some shows that you watched on Saturday mornings or Friday nights. It was an aesthetic, lifestyle, and most importantly, a community. The early and mid-2000s made sure anime wasn't just a fad. It made it stick and told some of the best stories in media as a whole.
面白い映画を作ろうっていうことが最大の目的で、それでスタッフに対しては終身雇用の保障は一切しません。会社っていうのはね
I can't talk about things that made this medium into what it is without mentioning Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli. Born in Tokyo City, he was always interested in manga. Starting work as an in-between artist in 1963 at Toei, he worked his way up into lead animating and co-directing various projects, and finally directing his own named Future Boy Conan. The name Ghibli was actually chosen by Miyazaki because of his love for aircrafts, being a nickname of one of his favorite planes. And after he pioneered this, his run as a writer and a director is pretty much unmatched, releasing 4 feature-length films in the span of about a decade, all being met with critical and commercial success, with Princess Mononoke winning Japan's Picture of the Year and was briefly the country's highest grossing film. Between his story and Joe Hisaishi's breathtaking scores, Ghibli had something for every era, with the great Walt Disney even acquiring them for a bit in 1996 to distribute them worldwide, and in 2001, Spirited Away won the Academy Award for Best Animated Picture. The unique stories, storytelling, and art style was always there, whether it be war-torn stories like Grave of the Fireflies, unique dramas like The Tale of Princess Kaguya, fun lighthearted stories like Ponyo and My Neighbors the Yamadas, or grand adventures like My Neighbor Totoro and Castle in the Sky. Ghibli has always been there, and even if it's not under Miyazaki, I hope the studio continues to be here as it holds one of the most consistent, high-quality productions, not only in anime, but in all of animated media. But now, we come to the big push, the era that made the medium bigger than it's ever been. What the last 2 eras did, numbers and scale-wise, almost has nothing on the anime boom of the 2020s.
Who says humans are weak?
Haven't grown up that much.
Bad move by Yusuke. Sit tight. Hard Talks Anime will be right back.
We are going to press stop. So you knew he was doing this and never thought to do something?
I can't lose you! Just please, please, please stop this!
I can't do that!
Are you sure we can keep this up?
Wasn't before, but I am now.
He loves him just as much as you, even though he's millions of light years away. A new perspective is here.
Now, personally, I think this one's the best. And if you disagree, well, everybody has their opinion.
Heart Talks Games, only on Pilaf Entertainment.
Pilaf.
Sometimes we bite off a little more than we can chew. Trust me, happens to the best of us. But we got you covered. After every major episode, a Pilaf bite is coming your way. Shorter, faster, all the flavor. Pilaf Bites, only on Pilaf Entertainment.
Pilaf.
Weeks ahead, we expect to see the number of cases, the number of deaths, and the number of affected countries climb even higher. WHO has been assessing this outbreak around the clock, and we're deeply concerned both by the alarming levels of spread and severity and by the alarming levels of inaction. We have therefore made the assessment that COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
In 2020, a global pandemic hit Earth. The coronavirus was deemed highly contagious, and all residents across the whole world were told they needed to stay inside, and when they didn't, they needed to stay 6 feet away from each other. This was overall a dark time because usually humans have entertainment to fall back on like sports, but even they were postponed or outright cancelled for the time being. Movies of course halted, if not ceased production until further notice. All humans could turn to were their favorite content creators still going strong, and animation. Not only anime, but animation as a whole hit a huge spike because you can do all this from home and through the internet. And to reverse back a bit, anime was still steadily and surely on the rise in the late 2000s and 2010s, with Toonami actually coming back in 2012. Plus, to replace the likes of 4Kids, every major kid station had anime or anime-inspired shows during this time. Other than Toonami, Cartoon Network had a hold of the new Pokemon series that would release. Disney would take a hold of Beyblade and even Yokai Watch. And Nicktoons was the home of the recut and redub of Dragon Ball Z named Dragon Ball Z Kai. Back to the 2020s, in general, the anime aesthetic was just rising during this time. Hyperpop and lo-fi style music boomed during this era, having anime-inspired aesthetics, plus 90s anime AMVs were peaking again. Even with all of this, there really is one major reason because of this boom, and that is streaming. Not only anime, but all these animated shows were more accessible now than ever. With companies not being able to film anything, they relied on all of their animated content, no matter where it was from. Hulu, Amazon Prime, and Netflix pushed it so much, with anime being in Netflix's top 10 for the first time ever. And of course, Crunchyroll, the world's biggest streaming anime app, getting millions of new subscribers. Global simulcast and dubs were also a big part of this. Now, in general, the only localization that happened when dubbing was the characters speaking in English, and the internet was just as impactful during this time. But now with anime review channels and analytical style content, these proved that anime had deeper stories and was able to get it out to a wider audience. It even had cosigns from huge celebrities. This was the era where humans who grew up watching anime were getting into these roles of influence, and the ones that always liked anime were able to speak freely. And due to this, the ones that always liked anime but may have been shy or didn't want to say anything about it were now able to speak freely. Then the shows that got us here: Jujutsu Kaisen, My Hero Academia, and Chainsaw Man carrying the Shonen torch, AOT being a premier show that was popular worldwide, Komi Can't Communicate, Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro, and My Dress Up Darling being the shows that led to the rise of the rom-com genre, and Studio Ghibli's backlog finally being fully available on streaming. And by this point, what is there to say about cosplay, fan circles, and conventions? They hit a peak that was never ever seen before. And if it wasn't an anime focused con, their anime sections and guests became a large part of the show. The real only bitter part to this boom that most have is, it's not the semi-niche thing anymore. Anime is now more global than ever, and some see that as a bad or irritable thing, mainly because where was this love when they were a kid or teen? Humans who liked these shows and weren't afraid to show it got bullied and ostracized. But now, some of the biggest stars are talking about and even wearing merch from their favorite show. And as with fame of any kind, it brings interest good and bad. Streamers who go to these anime cons have been criticized for making fun of cosplayers at the convention just because they don't understand.
I want to genuinely know who's like buying this shit though.
Oh no. If you're a bully, you're not ready to join the anime community. Teasing a dude for wearing cosplay just means you're too embarrassed to wear what you want to every day. When you learn to love yourself, the positive energy shows up everywhere you go. And you don't have to ask things like,
bro, where the bad at, bro?
Being yourself is always better than being a bully. And if your insecurities lead you to make fun of people in your own community, don't go to DreamCon. Go to therapy!
I do think that it's great that anime has hit a new global stride, and I hope it builds off of this going forward. As we said earlier, each boom wasn't just about access. It reflected technological shifts, changing fan identity, and how anime itself evolved to meet those changes. From being that weird Japanese cartoon to a globally respected storytelling medium. But what do you think? Was there an era that I missed? Do you like the fact that anime has hit this brand new height in popularity? Whatever your opinion is, I would love to hear it. But my name is Hart, and humans, I'll see you later.
Everybody has their own unique relationship with the characters that means something different to everybody who watches the show. So when they see their favorite characters on the wall, it has that moment of sparking joy, that moment of enthusiasm, and they see themselves in the artwork.
Pilaf